Hello and welcome. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and at ISCON 2022, in this particular segment, we're going to be having a fascinating conversation on the whole theme around defining security leadership and strategy to help organizations build agility and resilience in what clearly are proving to be uncertain times. And I have some amazing couple of people from industry to talk to me about this. Welcome, Amit. Welcome, Bhavita. Truly privileged to have you here.
Thank you, Arjun.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Arjun.
Thank you, sir. And I'm directly going to launch into this because we've got an interesting 30 minutes ahead and I intend to make the most of it. With your permission, Amit, if I could come to you, this whole concept of security leadership and embedding that into the very strategy of the organization is something that's been spoken about, well, for quite a few years and increasingly so over the last 2 years. But if you were to move beyond the articulation of the literature, what is the real life application of the statement that we've just made and that industry seems to be talking so much about?
Okay, so very interesting question, and I doubt if 30 minutes will be enough for this question. Okay. I'll instead of giving my views, let me quote the World Economic Forum report, which came out earlier this year. And it talks about inclusion of cyber security in the prime scheme of things. It talks about it is directing the business leaders to prioritize cyber security in business decisions. It articulates that cyber security leadership is gaining the board support. True. Which is obvious, by the number of attacks that we are seeing. And the third part, which it focuses on training and retaining talent. And now that's very interesting part of it, because it is not only for the security teams. It is all for the organization as well, for the people who are able to identify the business risk that they have. Okay. And that same report actually talks about bridging the gaps between the security focus or the CISOs and the business executives, which are the CEOs and CFOs, etc. Okay. The focus globally is moving on to business resilience. Resilience is not possible without the CISOs knowing about business or the business folks telling them how the business is working. So the biggest hurdle or the solution in this is understanding of business, understanding of security, and a fantastic amount of communication between the two.
That's an interesting aspect. That's very interesting, Amit, because I'm exactly going to take that to Babita. Babita, Amit just articulated in a brilliant fashion about how to really approach the whole concept. In your view, therefore, and for this wonderful audience of IT security leaders and experts and practitioners who are tuning in today at ISCON 2022, what is your definition of resilience and what does it entail? And what does it mean for a CISO who's been set the charter to build resilience for the organization? What, according to you, are the components that go into the engine?
Yeah, I'll just add on to what Amit has said, because he have covered almost all the topic which is relevant for resilience. So I'll just add on to what he is just mentioning. So being a CISO, as rightly mentioned by the last point made by Amit, communication. The communication between the board, senior executives, then the business team and the IT team. So this communication, and even now it comes to the customer level also. So being a CISO, we should know what the end delivery is being given and how the customers are being using that. And based on that also, we have to fix the gaps which has been identified. So which we will normally calculate among the business content. Okay, whatever the business thing is there. So even I feel like at times it is a role of a CISO even to educate our customers, because unless and until the awareness is there, whatever we do, it doesn't make any sense. And the second thing, anyway, as a security professionals, we are definitely doing mitigation methodologies, prevention methodologies, and even detection methodologies for the this thing. But communication, if we don't know the visibility of what is happening in the organization or what business we are doing and what is the solution which we are going to provide to our customers, If the CISO doesn't know about it, there is no point in having all these tools and technologies which has been implemented for that. So definitely, I say that the communication need to be there. And when it comes to the board level, being a security leader, we have to appraise the board that why we need that and what is the challenge. And that too, not in the language, the technical language, which they can't understand, but in the business language, in the figure out, like this is what, if something goes wrong, this is the amount that we are going to lose. Or the brand, when it comes to the brand name, which loss of brand name,
Loss
we
of
cannot,
reputation.
reputation, we cannot put it in the money, because it is really very challenging for us to put it in the money. But definitely we can articulate that also in a way that this is what it happens if this is not implemented, or if we are not taking these precautionary measures, this is the loss we are going to incur. So that kind of a message, if we are able to deliver to the our board members or senior executives, they can understand better and they can support us well. So
No,
that
that's
is.
actually interesting, Babita. With your permission, I'm going to take exactly and bring that back to you, Amit. Amit, we've seriously and constantly and consistently heard that cyber resilience, cyber security has become a board conversation, has become a part of the agenda. But really, do you see the conversations evolving to the point where measurable cyber resilience is being discussed in terms of metrics that are placed for what is called success and what is perhaps not success or failure? And therefore, how do you think that equally should evolve? Because the threat landscape and the sophistication is obviously accelerating at a pace that we've never seen before.
The measurement of resilience is still not there where it should be. Okay. In fact, let me articulate it in a different way. We've been the technology folks have been chasers rather than leaders of anything. Any new solutioning or any new transformation, digital transformation that we do, we add new technology or new processes. Now, for every new technology, you add more threat vectors.
True.
And first the hackers start coming in there, and then the tools start coming in there to protect it. So we are anyway behind. Okay, we are protecting what we should be protecting 5 years back or 3 years back. Okay, we are still chasing that game. So measurement is, therefore you can forget measurement of what is ahead of us. Okay, but that is an important thing. So as of now, the way that the conversations are going around is that resilience is both a mixture or both a feature of your technology and provisioning to the customer, as well as looking at the risk. So it's a balance game between the two activities. Okay, and that is how it is being played out. So there are frameworks being created for ensuring that the applications are available, the tools, the systems, the technologies are available to the customers, the people are available to the customers. So it is more of a uh, back of a napkin kind of discussions, rather than very, very quantified measurable metrics and then definition. See, your capacity, your flow measurements and all those things, when you do a new process, needs to be defined, and then you need to define a future capacity and resilience part of it.
So true. So true.
So we are little slow, but at least the discussions have started, the measurements have started, and I see in the near future we will have those measurable metrics.
Interesting, because Babita, if I could bring that to you, Amit made a point at the beginning when he started off, when he said, with the evolution of technology, because we are in a race to catch up, we continue to throw more and more technology and tools at various processes, problems, and opportunities. In that sense, Babita, do you get a feeling that as CISOs, you are adding capability without realizing the levels of complexities that you're equally adding for yourself, and are therefore at a juncture where you're unable to balance capability and competency with complexity, given the whole concept of equally, perhaps an acute shortage of skills?
Yeah, definitely, Arjun. The thing is that we are going for a more sophisticated technologies, and we have to keep in mind that these sophisticated technologies is being used by the cyber fraudsters also to get into the system. So it is a need of the time that we use AI, ML kind of solutions with us, with that we can, means like the how fast. Now, earlier we were concentrating more on the prevention methodologies. Now it is not like that. It is a zero-day trust, that zero-day attacks which are happening, the supply chain kind of attack which is happening. Now the resilience which we are building is like how fast we are able to detect and how fast we are able to respond. So that is the capability which we are trying to implement across the organization. So rightly mentioned by Amit, there is no measurability. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity, we say that capability, this availability is another one of the main criteria which we have seen that many of the organizations were not able to cater to the availability of the customers at least for 2 hours or 3 hours due to the huge volume during the digital this COVID situation. The volume has increased to a certain level that they were not even able to manage that volume. So here again, the complexity of the technology. We have come up with a lot of technologies. We have given a lot of technologies to our end users. The volume, how they are using, we haven't calculated that. So that is why this has come. So definitely there should be some metrics, measurements, and review of the whole thing. Because when we go for this highly complex technology, it is very difficult to identify the cause or a root of any problem. So always we say that we have to make it as small modules, and we have to analyze that how these particular modules are working, and I have to see any gaps are there in between. There comes the involvement of the supply chain and other components which we are using. So we have to go deep into each and every technology. So the job of CISO is very difficult now, and especially when we are going to the cloud, where we can see lot of tick marks in the menu, where we have to understand that okay, these are the security features we have adopted for, and but where we don't know how it is implemented at the background.
No, I couldn't agree more with you, Babita, because you brought out a very critical aspect that I think must be discussed in much more detail, which is what I'm going to bring to Amit, and then I'm going to obviously bring that back to you, Babita. Amit, when we started off this conversation, we spoke about how organizations and CISOs and IT and security leaders are trying to build cyber resilience leadership. Now, it's also true that without the enablement of technology, there's only so much leadership or acceleration that is possible. As a CISO, however, when you look at the overall spectrum of the threat landscape, the sophistication of state or non-state actors, and you look at fiscal prudence, because, well, there is only finite money. We can't pay ourselves more than we earn. How do you manage to balance that? And what is your guidance to a new generation of IT security leaders and how to even approach this? Because like Babita said, this is complex. You guys will burn yourself out.
It is not that complex if you look at it. And how I approach this is going back to the very basics. Now, we can talk about cloud, and we can talk about
the distributed workforce
and AI, ML, and all those things. But if you just go back to the very basics, what are the components of complete IT? Okay, it is operating system, which can be user based or it can be a server based, applications, databases, and web servers, and the network which is involved. Okay, the complexity of application can be huge. It can be a Jupyter notebook to a very complex AI ML system sitting there, but it is an application nevertheless. The way it functions, it's still the same. So go back to the basics of how the reference architecture has been created. Understand where the data is flowing. Based on this data flow, create threat models. Okay, don't have to go into deep complexity of as Microsoft recommends, but again, a very rough recommendation that you can create. So where the application is coming in, the web server, so you look at authentication and you look at technical issues, web application firewall activities which are done. So you land up into the control, which is a web application firewall, but you look at what are the threats which are coming in. Okay. On a database, what all can go wrong? So you put those things. What all can go wrong in an operating system? You put that. And then you put controls on this. So by far you will finish maybe 90 to 95% of resolution of the threats that you see. Okay. The rest is in communication with the business guys. Guys, what are you exactly building? How will it work? Say, for example, you make a SaaS application. Now, SaaS application means like a Gmail. So in one server, you have emails for me, for Babita, and for you. Now, how are these segregated? Okay, so this is understanding how the application is defined in little more granular state. And then you can say, okay, guys, these three people maybe create three separate databases, okay, or put them in physically different servers, or there is a regulatory requirement. Arjun is in Canada, Babita is in Brazil, I am in India. Three of us have different regulatory requirement for data storage. So, put it there. So wherever is the area of operation. So moment you do these things, you are able to finish almost 98-99%. And rest, what Babita left said is 0 day, which you anyway cannot do anything about.
Cannot do anything.
But thieves go to places where there are less locks. Okay.
Very true.
So as many locks as you put, as the business demands, you are up and running.
No, that's actually true. Very, very true. Because Babita, that brings me to an important point, and you spoke about it right at the beginning of our conversation, where you said, you spoke about reputation, you spoke about the brand's image, which are fairly existential in nature, and which got me thinking into making this following statement: is that no security leadership is perhaps ever possible without our ability to protect our crown jewels, which is fundamentally data. And you equally spoke about, multi-cloud-based orchestrations. In a situation today where your architecture is distributed, like Amit just mentioned, you have multiple cloud orchestrations and that kind of an ecosystem. How critical or complex does data protection become, and therefore what is your guidance on how to approach that journey?
Yeah, Arjun, now, as of now, India is not having any data protection rules and regulations like GDPR and all. But definitely, we are waiting for that to come. So once that comes into existence, then the rules, when something is there to penalize, everyone will be afraid and they will be doing it. So that is a good part of it, but it is a hectic job for the CISOs. And when we are coming to how we are going to contain or how we are going to know about it, definitely we have to know the entire data flow architecture, like mentioned by Amit. Once the architecture is there, then data protector, what our data we are collecting, we should tell the customers that why we are collecting the data. And after that, who is responsible for and what kind of that we have to, and the most difficult task in this to identify the crown jewel data, which will be first the classification of the data, which is the crown jewel for a particular organization, that need to be done. And after that, based on the classifications of the data, here the main one of the main problem which I see is that it is the data owner who have to define that what is important for me or for them. So that kind of definition, for that we have to educate all the stakeholders who are involved in the whole process, so that they can correctly identify the crown jewels or the data which need to be protected, and we can focus on that, and how we can protect that should be identified, and we should take necessary measures to protect the same. And in the multi-clouded architecture, when we are adopting that, I always say that if it is really very important data, I may not be in a situation to share it to the cloud, or even if I am sharing that, it is up to different people. And even if I am sharing to the cloud, how far it is secured there? There comes up again the problem of the reputation. When it comes to a third party, even if we are dedicating or giving the service or we are having the agreement, ultimately, if something goes wrong, it is the organization who is liable for that.
Of course.
So whenever we are giving that, we are planning for outsourcing our activity of our crown jewel or the crown data, which is the mine now, we should think thrice, not twice. Thrice, like how it will be, what are the architectural or security measures which is deployed in their environment, whether we have the complete visibility, whether we can get the logs. Now we are more focused on the forensic logs, that audit logs, audit trials and all, because we are worried about the 0-day threats and all. And if something goes wrong, how far we are able to identify. So whether that audit logs can be made available, Then again, the regulatory concern like localization of the data, whether it is inside in India. When it comes to the cloud, only with the IP we can identify whether that is in India or not. So that is also a difficult challenge for CISOs like us to identify that the data localization is correctly made. And even when doing, we have to check that backup data is also in India. Many a times we have come across like they will say that, okay, the production data is in this thing in India only, but sometimes they might be taking their backup data to some other cloud somewhere in India, not in India, outside India.
Outside.
All these things need to be taken care before we go for a solution. So that is the
interesting. Interesting, Babita. Can I just bring in Amit into this conversation?
Yeah,
because I have a supplementary question, Amit, which is that in a funny manner, what we're talking about is security leadership and the ability to bring in agility. But with the vast amount of tools, the logs and the data that Babita was just talking about that you produce, bring in plurality at very, very complex, at unprecedented levels. Are we talking about these concepts at cross purposes? Agility and our ability to just sift through tons and tons of data.
I think this is a massive problem and leads to missing out on the actual warnings also which come up, the alerts which come up. The solution is twofold. One is measurement and fine tuning. I agree that we are measuring something which is old, but measuring and fine tuning. The logs will give you a historical perspective of what is happening. Okay. It will not protect you from things which are happening right now. Okay. To solve that, you have to set up proactive policies in your organization. There are tools which are available in cloud. Say, for example, if my S3 bucket is something where I store data for people to use. Now, by design, or when people are configuring it for testing purpose or something, they will make it enable to the internet, or there are a lot of other threats which are available on that. What you can do with these tools is to ensure that the bucket gets locked or becomes inaccessible as soon as it is created with those basic precautions being violated. Okay, so you will reduce. So there will be a time lag, maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds, when somebody creates this funny thing which is violating the policies that you have, and then the policies will get implemented. So finite delay which is acceptable, but you can protect this. So two things. One is proactive controls. Okay, you should not be dependent on somebody to do something. So in fact, I would look at it as threefold, three solutions that I profess. One is proactive controls. Second is logs, as Babita mentioned, to tell you, in case you've missed something, there is some alerts which can come up. Third is the leadership perspective, that we were talking about, which is bringing in the security culture. Okay. The culture is the most important part. And I'll go back to the World Economic Forum report. Sorry, this is a BCG report which came in. It said you spend almost 80% of the time or 90% money on the technologies. 80% of problems are because of people, not intentionally goofing up, but configuration changes, configuration errors, not patching the systems properly. So about 80% of problems are because of users. So if the leadership is in place, CISO as an evangelist, CISO as a salesman is able to sell security to the company, you are up and running. So three major things: proactive, measurement, and culture.
Absolutely. And like I think, Amit, both you and Babita mentioned right at the beginning, this is a conversation that 30 minutes is going to fall short for. But that's pretty much time what we have for in the segment. And I've got about 5-6 minutes where I'm going to wind this conversation down by looking and trying to peer into the future. Because both of you spoke, and I noted this down, both of you spoke initially about skills, you spoke about communication. Of course, Amit, you and Babita also spoke about culture. In that sense, is it a dichotomy of sorts? And I'm primarily talking about the turn of the phrase. Babita, I come to you and then I'll close it out with Amit. Is that the future of trust perhaps starts with zero trust?
Yes, we have to go with zero trust because the thing is like the environment has changed or evolved in such a way that even if we say that our business, especially BFSI sector, our business is based on the trust between the customer. But as a CISO, I should say I believe in zero trust. So that is how I can say keep the trust of my customers. So that zero trust is definitely what is required. So when it comes to zero trust, because everything is covered in that, each and every traffic is moving, we are having the visibility of that. We know what it is for, and we can take necessary actions for the prevention or even the to make to prevent it or to allow it, or if any exceptions are given, that also we can take care. So the review, everything comes with the single word of zero trust. So when it comes to zero, so I definitely say that now it is the time of zero trust for keeping the trust of our customers.
Very well. Well, that's an interesting perspective. Amit, does therefore, in your view or in any form of articulation, does trust have culture, communication, and people for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
So great. You mentioned people, you mentioned us, and you mentioned food. Okay. I think when we were young, our parents told us if you don't know somebody, don't take any food from them.
Indeed so.
Don't
Indeed.
take lift from them. Okay. Now it was whitelisting of only known people. Okay. And that too with a pinch of salt of mistrust.
Absolutely.
Okay. Suddenly a guy comes up, long lost relative, and he says, "Oh, I have to come and pick you up," and all those things. No, I'm not coming with you. This is what we have taught our children. Okay.
Absolutely.
This is in the physical domain. Why should it be any different in the virtual domain? So I think this answers my question on your question on zero trust. We have to replicate the physical domain into virtual domain. We have not been doing it. We are laggards in doing this. It's just because we sit in a closed computer with a screen which is only pointing at us, we
True.
feel that the world is not watching us. So we are in the same shitty world, and
Exactly. Which is just getting badder by the day.
so it is just the same term which has come up, which our parents taught us, and we've taught our children, just inculcating that into the virtual world.
Absolutely. And Babita, in conclusion, with the sophistication of the technology available today at your disposal, at Indian industry's disposal, do you get the feeling that with the right logical approaches, CISOs as a community will be able to sleep better in the future?
I don't think so. See, let me tell you one thing. The CISO job, they should be technically capable. They should understand the business. They should give a solution also for that. And they should understand the future also. So it is so I cannot say when the technology is evolving, CISOs also have to upskill themselves. They have to know about what and all things are going wrong in the technology so that they can help. So I don't think that the CISO role have a peaceful kind of thing, but it is really a challenging and very very interesting job. Every day is a learning for us. So I definitely say that this evolving technology will give a more learning process and learning things to us, and have to fight and
Very
have
true.
to.
Very well articulated, really. No, I couldn't agree more. And Amit, in conclusion, I have a very far-reaching question for you, which I just want your personal perspective on. Given that CISOs and IT leaders today straddle multiple vehicles, which is obviously the entire IT ecosystem, the security ecosystem, and also the business ecosystem, because it's existential. Do you think that in the maybe coming very few years, CISOs will be aptly placed to take their rightful place as leaders of their organizations? Because you just naturally apt at looking at a very diverse and plural ecosystem for you to be able to equally look at business as a leader, as a managing director or a CEO.
I do not think that will happen, at least in about 20 years in future.
Okay.
the reason is simple. Say for example, I'll quote with an analogy. People say that a lot of CFOs have an exact view of what is happening in the company. They know which number is coming in, which number is going bad. So they have a fantastic view on the company. In the very recent years, the same thing has been told about the HR folks as well. Okay, and we have one of the recent examples where a head of HR of one company has taken over as CEO of some other company. So these are divergent views. These are different views which are accepted. We had Indra Nui, who was a CFO and then became the CEO and became one of the most influential and successful CEOs. The thing comes out with generating business. The CISOs have a view of risk first, okay, and how to solve that to business. It's a dichotomy, because CISOs want to lower the risk, and when you lower the risk, you cannot generate profit, which is a different school of thought of the CEOs.
Indeed.
You have to take risk to do business. Okay. Otherwise, you will not generate revenue. You have to take risk. CISOs think differently, how to reduce risk, not to avoid, how to reduce risk. So there is a balance which is at the different places of a CISO. Okay.
I couldn't agree more.
So I doubt whether the CISOs will go into become CEOs. However, CISOs, that I'm very, very sure of, is that CISOs will eventually land up on the board in not less than 5 years.
Wonderful.
Not more than 5 years. There are segments in the boards created. See, when we talk about a board, it is not the board meeting per se. It is the preceding meetings on audit and risk and all those things. There will be a separate committee set up to manage cyber risk. And I think that has started happening in few companies, and it will become a norm in the next 1 or 2 years for all public listed companies, that there will be a separate committee to take care of cyber risk. And in another 3-4 years, you will find CISOs sitting on the boards as well.
Brilliant. Couldn't have heard better news and better perspectives. Babita, Amit, as always, again, another fascinating set of conversations and dialogues with both of you. Your ability to enrich any conversation is just brilliant. And I think from all of us here at Strateging, we're extremely grateful. Thank you for taking the time out to join us.
Thank you. Thank you, Arjun. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Amit, and thank you, Arjun. It was a really wonderful session. And to add on to Amit, I will say that CISOs are not good marketing person. So they cannot...
And that is, of course, conversation for a different day. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Babita and Amit in conversation with me about security leadership. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a second.